Hi everyone, today I want to show you a helpful AI-powered website for creating books. It is called Dream2Art. With this website, you can write a book even if you only have an idea at the beginning. Dream2Art helps you structure that idea and turn it into a complete, consistent, and logical story. In this video, I will create a small fantasy book from scratch, from the first idea and characters to scenes and exporting the final file. First, we create an account. You can sign up or log in with your Google account. After logging in, we get to the book creation page. Then I click New Project and enter the title of my story. This will be a fantasy book, and I will call it The First Star of Valerian. Next, I move on to the project settings. I choose English as the language because the book will be written in English. For the audience, I choose Adult. In the creativity settings, I choose a structured text and a balanced mode, Balanced. Now, I choose the genres. For this story, I select fantasy and fairy tale because this will be a magical fantasy story. Then I choose the writing style. I select magical writing style and also add magical and light novel. After that, I create the project. After creating the project, we get to the additional settings. Here I leave the text generation settings unchanged. The images will be generated in a one-to-one format. I keep the same genres. For the book format, I choose a 5 because this is a suitable book format. The story will be written in the third person, so I keep third person. After that, I go to the Styles section. In the Styles section, we can upload a visual style reference. This reference will define the style for the other images in the project. I have already prepared an image with a style I like. It shows a fairy tale, magical fantasy world, and it will set the general mood and atmosphere for the future book. Here we can also add a text reference. I will add a reference text so that the generated story follows the style I want. The system will use this example as a guide to keep a similar narrative style, mood, and tone. For the text reference, I use a prepared example in a classic fantasy style. After uploading the reference, I click Save to save the style settings. Next, I go to Style Rules. Here we can add extra rules for the writing style of the future book. I want the story to be written like a classic fantasy adventure, with a mysterious and magical atmosphere. In the Rules field, I add this text. Write in a classic fantasy adventure style with a mysterious magical atmosphere. The language should be clear and readable, but still poetic and beautiful. Then I save the rule. Next, I go to the StoryBible section. Here, we can create and describe the foundation of the story, the universe, characters, locations, and important objects that exist in this world. StoryBible helps keep the story consistent. All the important facts we add here can later be used when generating scenes. I will start by creating the world. My world will be called Alarian. I enter the name Alarian and move on to its description. Here, I want to generate the appearance of the world and some important facts about it. I choose short descriptions, 1 or 2 sentences. I set the number of variants to 3 and keep the generation mode balanced. Now I briefly describe the world. The Sky Isles of Alarian are a fantasy world of floating islands above a dark, misty abyss. After that, I start the generation and look at what ideas the system suggests. By default, there is a present-day layer here. But my world is a fantasy world, so this layer does not fit. First, I remove it from the layers of this world, and then I can delete it from the project completely. After the generation, we get several descriptions of the world's appearance. I will not read all of them, but they fit the atmosphere of Alarian very well. So I select them and move them into the layers using Drag All to Layers. This way, all important world details are saved in StoryBible and can be used later when generating the text. I also want to generate an image for this world based on the description. The image should be created in the same style as the visual reference I uploaded earlier. Next, I decide to add one more fact about the world I'm creating. This can be done manually. In the Ideas section, I click Add, choose the type fact, and write a fact that I created myself. Then I add it and drag it into layers, so this fact is saved in the world description and can be used in future generation. Next, I move on to the characters. I add a new character and name her Lyra Vale. First, I want to add a few facts that I created myself. The first fact is, she's a 14-year-old girl. I add it as a character fact. The next fact is, she's from the floating island of Aston. This means that Lyra comes from the floating island of Aston. I also want to show that she is afraid of her own power. For this, I add a motivation. She is afraid of her own power. Now I drag all the facts I created into layers. This way, they are saved in StoryBible and can be used when creating scenes and generating the book text. Now, I want to generate more details about Lyra. I choose two variants for different categories: appearance, facts, personality, voice, and motivation. The length of each variant is about 2 to 4 words. I keep the generation mode balanced. Then I click Generate and wait to see what ideas the system will suggest. The additional facts about the character are generated. I look through them and see that I do not like one of the appearance facts. I delete it, but it does not disappear forever. If I need it later, I can always restore it from the trash. Then I check the other facts. They work well for me, so I select them and drag them into layers. Now these details will be taken into account when the story is generated. I also want to manually add a few details about Lyra's appearance. She will have long silver hair, and she will be tall. I add this as an appearance description. Lyra has long silver hair and a tall, graceful figure. Then I move it into layers as well. Next, I want to generate an image of Lyra. I click Image Generation and check the result. It is important to see whether the image matches what I had in mind. Long silver hair, a tall figure, and the general feeling of a fantasy heroine. The image of Lyra works for me. It matches the character I wanted to create, so I set it as the character avatar by clicking Set as Avatar. Now Lyra has not only a written description, but also a visual image. Next, I create the second character. His name will be Kyle Rune. I add a new character and enter his name, Kyle Rune. I also want to create other ways characters can address him, aliases. These can be shortened names, nicknames, or different forms of address used in the story. I start the generation, and the system suggests several options: Kyle, Rune, and Kai. These options work well for me, so I keep them. Now other characters can call him Kyle, Kai, or Rune. After that, I return to Lyra and generate aliases for her as well. From the suggested options, I keep Lyra and Lyra of Aston. The other options do not fit, so I delete them. Now I return to Kyle and start adding the facts I created myself. The first fact is, he's 15 years old, so Kyle is 15. The next fact is, he's a student from the Star Academy. Then I add another fact. His power comes from shadows instead of light. His power is connected not to light, but to shadows. I also want to add his inner fear. He hides a deep fear of being rejected. This will be his motivation. Kyle is afraid of being rejected, and this can influence his choices in the story. After that, I drag all these facts into layers so they are saved and can be used later. Now I add Kyle's appearance. He will be tall, handsome, and blonde. I add this phrase, Kyle is tall and handsome with blonde hair. Then I drag this description into layers as well. Now I want to generate additional details about Kyle. I choose the categories: appearance, facts, personality, voice, and motivation. For each category, I want to get 2 variants. The length of each variant is about 2 to 4 words. I keep the generation mode balanced. Then I click Generate and wait for the system to prepare new ideas for the character. The generated ideas for Kyle appear. I look through them and see that one appearance fact does not fit. I delete this option. Then I scroll through the rest of the ideas. They work well for me, so I drag them into the core layer. This way, these details are saved in the character description and can be used later when generating the story. Now I generate an image for this character. I like the result, so I set it as the avatar by clicking Set as Avatar. Now Kyle also has his own visual image. Next I move on to the place where the events of the story will happen. The first location will be called Floating Island of Aston. This is the floating island of Aston, the place connected to our main character, Lyra. Now I want to add a few facts about this location that I created myself. Some descriptions I add as appearance, meaning how the place looks, and some I add as facts, meaning important information about the location. This way the system understands not only what the island looks like, but also what role it plays in the story. Next, I drag all the ideas I created into the main layer. Now I want to generate a few more short descriptions and facts about this place. I start the generation and look at the ideas that appear. I like all of them, so I drag them into the layer. Then I create an image of this place using Generate Image. If I like the image, I set it as the location avatar. While the image is being created, I also want to generate alternative names for this place. From the suggested options, I like the lifting crown. I keep this name as an additional option. After that, I check the image of the location. I like it, so I set it as the avatar. Now we have created the foundation of our world and our future book. We already have the universe, characters, location, and important facts that will help the system keep the story consistent. Next, I want to show how to create scenes. Scenes can be created in two ways: manually, by adding each element step by step, or by generating the whole scene at once. First, we will create the first scene manually. I create scene 1. First, I choose the universe, Alarion. Then I choose the location, floating island of Astern. After that, I add two characters, Lyra Vale and Kyle Rune. Now I need to describe what will happen in this scene. In the first scene, the story begins on the floating island of Astern late at night. The city is asleep, an airship is docked at the Sky Harbor, and the stars are fading behind dark clouds. After that, I create the first description and start the generation. When the text is generated, I read it. If I do not like something, I can always edit it manually, rewrite it, or generate it again. But now the first description works for me, so I move on to the next element of the scene. Next, I add an action. Lyra Vale wakes up because she hears a strange voice calling her name. After that, I create the next element of the scene. Now I want to create the next paragraph of the scene, but at this moment, I do not have a clear idea of what should happen next. In this case, I can rely on Dream2Art. I do not fill in the scene description manually. I simply start the generation without adding an extra description. The system continues the story on its own, using the scene, characters, location, and all the facts from StoryBible. The text is generated, and I see that it continues my story. But I want to improve the ending of the first scene a little. So I return to the first scene, look at the final paragraph, and decide what should be changed, added, or regenerated. At the end of the first scene, I want to add one more action. Lyra helps Kyle climb up, pulls him to safety, and realizes who he is. She understands that the stranger is Kyle. I write this as a scene action. Then I start the generation. This gives the first scene a more complete ending, and also leads us to Lyra and Kyle's first meeting. Now everything works for me, and I move on to the second scene. We finish the first scene by adding the final action, where Lyra helps Kyle get to safety and realizes who he is. Now we can continue. I will create the second scene in a different way, by generating it completely. Here, I immediately specify that the scene should include action and dialogue. This means the scene will include both movement and a conversation between the characters. In the second scene, Kyle will explain how he ended up in this situation. I add this description for the generation. Then I start the scene generation and check the result. The generated second scene works for me too. Now we already have the foundation of the book. The first scene created manually step by step, and the second scene generated completely from a description. After that, we can continue creating the book in the same way. We can add new scenes, dialogues, actions, character thoughts, and new events. We can also add objects that will play an important role in the story. To do this, we can always return to StoryBible, create a new object, add its description and facts, group elements together, and use them in future scenes. So Dream2Art helps not only to write a single piece of text, but to build the whole structure of a book: the world, characters, locations, facts, scenes, and chapters. When the book is ready, we can export it. I go to the Export Book section. Here I can see the created scenes and chapters. I can also manually add a new chapter and generate it if needed. Then I choose the Export option. There are 4 available formats: EPUB, FB2, DOCX, and PDF. I choose PDF and click Download. The book is ready and downloaded as a PDF file. Now I open the file and check the result. Here I can see Chapter 1 and the 2 scenes we created. If I want to correct something, I can always return to the scene editor. There I can rewrite the text, change the dialogue, regenerate a separate fragment, make the scene longer, add new details, and then export the book again in the format I need. This is convenient because the book does not have to be perfect on the first try. You can gradually improve each scene, change details, develop the characters, and update the final file. This is how you can use Dream2Art to go from an idea to a finished book. We created a project, set up the style, added a visual and text reference, described the world, characters, and location, created the first scenes, and exported the book as a PDF. That is all for today. Thank you for watching.